Perfect. Well, thanks again, Dr. John and Jan, for having me. I'm really excited to be here and just talk about really what's kind of happened over my life over the years that really has been woven in and kind of led me to where I am now. And it's really neat how it ties into my history with the Olympic team, but also just my own personal story of competing and training and being overtrained and injured and sick and all the usual things that a lot of us struggle with before we understand the real power of nutrition. So some of my highlights when I was swimming as a kid, we had a pool and I thought I knew what I was doing and thought I knew how to swim and everything was cool. And I broke my arm and it grew crooked, and it was before they knew that you actually had to operate on this kind of a fracture. And so they said, well, you can swim for therapy. It just so happens my coach moved to town that very summer. And I thought, well, I've got this. So I went up and dove in the pool, not realizing that pool was about 50 times bigger than any pool I'd ever been in. So I got about half the way down the pool and had to stop and get out. But my coach said, hey, it looks like we've got a long way to go, so let's get started tomorrow. So that glimmer of hope blossomed, and I got to be with that coach all the way through to my collegiate All-American. So pretty phenomenal. I remember that he also was the one who said those famous words, you got to eat, because he saw how much I was training, and I hit a stale point where I wasn't getting any better, and I was sick and hurt a lot. And he just said, look, you're just not getting enough calories, so you got to eat. And then my senior year, I was at our national championships, and I did my race and had one of those phenomenal kind of almost out of body experiences where I had a great race, but then I had to do it again later that night. And at that time, I just was ignorant, and I thought all I needed to do was rest. So I went to bed and tried to sleep between the two events, and did nothing for my recovery. And so sure enough, that night, I didn't do as well as I had done that morning. And so that's when it finally dawned on me that the power of nutrition goes beyond just the calories, but I still hadn't figured out, what else was the real value of that. So then, I learned the hard way that I wasn't giving credit to the real power of our food. So then I go to med school, and in med school, I had my, few minutes of nutrition and learned about the sciencey stuff of nutrition. I learned that the chemical structure of protein and carbs and the calorie value of those things, but nothing that was really truly applicable to my life as an athlete and to my future life as a doctor. And so I was also still swimming and competing throughout medical school. And so I started to realize that I didn't have the knowledge of the right fuel, and something was really missing, but I just didn't know what it was. So then I go into my pediatric residency, and that's where I actually had my first stint as the doctor for USA Swimming. And I was still competing myself and being their team doctor, so it was a really fun kind of thing. But that experience, coupled with then when I got started working with the U.S. Olympic Committee after 5 years of working with USA Swimming, USA Soccer, and USA Basketball, that whole experience was when I started to get my eyes open to the world of supplements and the world of all these things that athletes were putting in their body that they were using to try to fill in a gap or try to give them a boost. And again, a lot of them really didn't always know. They just said, oh, I'm doing this because my friend recommended it or because the advertisement looked good. But being with the national teams and the Olympic Committee, we did drug testing. And some of these kids really had no idea that what they were putting in their mouth was something that was going to show up positive on a drug test. And so it was really heartbreaking to see some of those things happening. So I was learning not only were these things of very little value, they didn't have a lot of research behind them, but some of them actually could cause a problem. So that was kind of my exposure then to the world of supplements. So then after that, I move on and I become the team doctor for Vanderbilt University Athletics. And at the same time, I'm with all those athletes and traveling with them, I'm still competing myself. I'm still doing team doctor travel with all the USA sports and then with the Olympic Committee. So then I'm kind of building up all of this experience and all this knowledge, and I'm going, wow, these problems are coming up by the fact that I'm thinking that there might be a difference with what we're putting in our mouths. All of a sudden I realize there's calories with benefits, and there's calories with consequences, and that is a big distinction between how those affect our body, not only for our general health, but of course for any kind of exercise or performance. So I was seeing the multiple supplements they were eating, and the problems with kids that were eating more of the calories with consequences rather than the calories with benefits. And so somewhere along in there, it kind of dawned on me, the light bulb went off that, I didn't have ADD, attention deficit disorder, but I had NDD, nutritional deficit disorder, where I was just not getting the right understanding of the power of our food. So at that point, I thought I needed to educate myself, since medical school had not done that. And so I started researching really about food and performance. So at that time, my biggest thrust was, how can food benefit my performance? And then how can I pass that on to all of these athletes that I'm working with? Well, the cool thing about that is once I started to dive into that world, I saw a vast world of research on not only how nutrition affects our performance, but way beyond that, and how it affects our general health in so many different ways. And that the benefits of fruits and vegetables and how they're so important, not only for performance and recovery, but also for our long-term health, and how they can help prevent disease. And I'd already been learning that in my field of sports medicine, that literally 50% of overuse injuries are preventable. And so I thought, wow, now I'm also learning that there's a ton of the illnesses and the diseases that we get that are also preventable just if we ate better and ate more fruits and vegetables. So I was really kind of piecing this all together, and it was being really woven in nicely to my life. So at that point, the word fuel had an entirely different meaning to me than it did when I was actually competing in college. And I started to think about, well, they're elite athletes, they can do whatever they want. But then I started to see the differences in their performances and the differences in their illnesses and their injuries, much of which was tied not only to their nutrition, but then, of course, whether they were being overtrained or not. And I thought, even though the elite athletes have genetic differences than many people, they're still a human body, just like I am and everybody on this call. And we have to really take care of that human body and learn how to fuel that, whether we're going to work in a stressful situation, we're taking care of kids, we're walking around the block, or if we're an elite athlete. So the ability to be able to fuel ourselves and recover and be protected is super important. So once I made that connection, then my own personal performances started to be sometimes better in some races than they were even in college. And so just the power of, again, how nutrition can benefit us became very real to me. So I started at that point really having a deep appreciation for not only how I could fuel myself immediately or for the near term, but then get that proper recovery nutrition and then protect myself for the long term. Because so many of the athletes, I was just telling them, you're the best in the world right now, but if you have a bad day, that could be a change in your world ranking. And you can't perform at your best if you're not truly as healthy as you can possibly be on any given day. And one of the ways to do that is your nutrition. So, of course, we talked about rest and staying well hydrated, but the recovery was so crucial, and I had learned that myself just the hard way. So that was when I started to see, hey, we got to fuel right, we have to recover, and then be protected from all the things that happen when we either exercise or compete, but also how we live life, right? Our immune system can really get stressed out. We can create a lot of muscle protein breakdown, a lot of free radicals, things that the stress of cortisol, those are all things that can be very damaging to our system if we don't have the right nutrition in our body to help kind of make that better. So fast forward from there, then after my stint with those, I was getting ready for my dry run, so to speak, the year before the Olympics in Sydney. And there was a USA team trip to Sydney, and it was during our summer, which means it was during their winter. So it was a really crazy thing. We all got there. The village was being built. Some of the venues were already completed. And as you say, John, everybody had Olympic fever. And unfortunately, very soon we realized that there are two forms of Olympic fever. There's the genuine excitement and the electricity of what's happening, and then there's the true illness and the sicknesses that happen. It was their winter. The flu was rampant. All the winter viruses were rampant, and we weren't prepared for that. And so, again, there were the kids that fell sick, and the majority of them were the ones that were really not paying attention to the more important things. They were training their butt off, but they weren't recuperating, they weren't resting, they weren't being hydrated, they weren't eating properly. And unfortunately, those were the ones that were usually getting sick and missing out on their opportunities. So again, just another eye-opener on really what Olympic fever can be. So just to tie that bow, you can kind of see now from me as a child to me now at, well into my career of sports medicine. It had taken years to accumulate that knowledge, but now we get to pass that on so that people don't have to wait that long and learn the hard way. It really tied everything together and helped me kind of accumulate the knowledge to see what I call the medical benefit of our food, the medical produce, and how that's so important for us, and how it goes way beyond just the benefit for performance and exercising, and that it applies to everybody in all forms of life and all walks of life, so that it's not just for that. I went diving into that research specifically, selfishly, to look for my own personal benefit for how the food would affect my performance. But thank goodness I looked, because that's when I found out how much more it could benefit every aspect of my life. So that was really an exciting thing. Well, then I moved from Nashville to San Diego, beautiful sunny San Diego. And within 4 months, I was on a plane heading to Australia for a couple months with the Olympic team. So that was truly the most unforgettable and electric experience of my life. I will never forget it. And it's just so interesting that even when you just said, you showed that video, it just brought back kind of that rush. So I've been to a couple Olympics where I've been able to watch them. I watch them on TV, and I still get that rush every single time. So it's really cool to kind of get that goosebumpy thing going into this week, and getting excited about what's going to happen, and hoping that they'll all be safe. So then I was at San Diego for a couple of years, and interestingly, I had been primed all this time for the day that my nurse walked into my office and said, this weekend, my husband ran a triathlon, and I was there cheering him on, and there was a booth over here that was fruits and vegetable powders in a capsule. And they had research, supposedly. And that's all she told me. She said, I just know you've looked at a lot of this stuff, and this is interesting to you, so I just want to let you know that. And so at first I thought, sounds interesting. At the same time, I thought, yeah, medical research, I know what that's like. They probably don't have anything. So I started to look into it. She told me it was called Juice Plus. And so I thought, all right, I'll check it out. So I really looked it up, and I said, oh my gosh, this is what food technology is all about, right? They take fully grown, ripe produce and then grind it up, take the water out, and then you're just left with this beautiful handful of intense concentrated nutrient powder. And I thought, that is phenomenal. What a way for me to literally bathe my whole system with this, in addition to eating what I need to eat. But if I don't do that every day, then I'm actually able to fill in all those gaps pretty nicely. And so I wasn't convinced yet, because I had to still look and see the research. But as a physician who'd already looked at all these supplements that these kids have been taking, and none of them were really backed by research to back up their claims and all that kind of thing, I was shocked when I saw that these were truly, independently done. They were randomized, they were double-blinded studies, placebo-controlled, and they were published at medical universities all over the world. So these were studies on Juice Plus, published in some of the most amazing medical journals that we have. And even in my field of sports medicine, the 4 studies published in there is really a big deal, because it's literally the most prestigious sports medicine journal in the world. So those were the kind of things that got me all excited, because I was already primed, like I said. And then when they told me about it, I was like, okay, I'm in. This is really amazing. I need it for myself, and I certainly need to be sharing this with the people who I care for. So, of course, I will eat it forever because of its insane power and value in my life. But I just think that it's so great that they take it to another level. I flood my body with those powders, but I also love their plant-based protein shake because it's a great recovery drink. Sometimes I have it for breakfast. I grow a lot of my own greens and food on our beautiful aeroponic tower garden. And now I'm getting extra support and benefits from the algae and seed-based omega. So it's just a really phenomenal thing. So again, all of this information is exciting in the world of athletics and elite athletics, but at the same time, it all applies to every single one of us on the planet. So I'm really excited to be part of that. I'm grateful to be part of the Juice Plus community and our mission of education and awareness and inspiring healthy living around the world. So thank you, Dr. John and Jan, for your impact on countless number of lives and just for taking the time to set this up and have me on tonight. So it's a real privilege. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Paul. That was fantastic. I just want to take you a little bit back to the pediatrics. And by the way, the book has the stamp of the American Academy of Pediatrics on here, and Juice Plus is mentioned in the book. But back to pediatrics, so many of the young athletes are children. And so a question coming from Tiffany is, she has a very young gymnastics daughter. How do children best minimize overuse injuries when they're training so many hours a week? For that matter, somebody just...
Yes. You know what I can do, doctor? I can mute everybody again and then ask you to unmute, and maybe that will help. Let me try.
Please do. Thank you.
Okay, doctor, now please unmute. Yes, very good.
Okay,
so put your pediatric hat on and sports hat. And we have so many moms and dads I know in my area, they're starting their children with sport at such an early age. And it gets me a little bit nervous, especially some of these contact sports like football. I'm seeing full contact football with children and the issue of concussions and gymnastics. You know, as yourself, these are young adults, aren't they? And so if you could just comment on, and I know it's different maybe for different sports, but at least if you'll single out a few things, maybe swimming, gymnastics, football.
Yeah, the swimming and gymnastics and some of those things are, and some of the soccer, the early stuff are relatively easy for some kids to do at early ages. And so I think a lot of those sports are things that kids do start relatively early. And in general, we're excited about any kid being active and being able to, develop some body strength and some balance skills, and just general sports skill development and motor development is incredibly important. Where it gets out of whack sometimes is when they start being trained like young adults before their bodies have really adapted to fully be able to be capable of that kind of exercise. So their bodies do break down. And we do see a lot of overuse with those kinds of sports as well. Once those kids focus early on, we try to really support the fact that we want kids to stay involved in different activities to kind of cross-train for a while before they super specialize at a later age. So we're hoping that message gets across. Some of the contact sports, some of them literally have rules, of course, that they can't do it before a certain age. And yet we see, of course, the concussions in football, but there's concussions in soccer and some of the other sports. So we're just trying to have a big campaign of awareness to a lot of the coaches on, the appropriate ways to tackle and making sure that kids have enough neck strength before they even do some of these sports. So we're trying really hard because obviously the sports aren't going to stop happening. We want to make sure they're as safe as possible, though. So.
And as you said, right, proper rest, proper hydration, proper nutrition is key as well.
Yeah.
From Mary, so many athletes are encouraged by their coaches and peers to eat diets high in animal proteins, to drink high protein shakes. I mean, people are into protein. They think they need more protein. So let's pump particularly whey and other animal proteins. Can you comment just how much protein do we need in general? and even the elite athlete? What are we talking about?
Yeah, it's great. I love this conversation in my office because it's nice to be able to give people an actual formula. So just for maintenance, we all need about 1 gram of protein per kilogram of our body weight. If you're exercising intensely, it could be 1.25 grams per kilogram. If you're a significantly elite, high-performing athlete, 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight of protein is really good. Very rarely does anybody need more than that, and there's a point where your body also can only use so much, and then it will try to store the rest, and kind of some of it gets converted to fat and other things. So we can't always use everything, and some of it has to be excreted from our kidneys, which also puts a big burden on our kidneys. If these kids are pounding down tons of protein powders and they're not staying well hydrated, there are some potential issues with that. But I do think that when we look at those numbers, and I'll give parents that number and the kid that number and say, just keep a diary for a couple weeks and see what you're doing. Most of the times they realize that they're getting plenty of it in just their regular food, and they don't need a lot of that excess. And if they do, maybe they just need 1 or 2 scoops in a shake a day, and that's it. They don't need it all day long every day. So we do try to make that much easier for them. And then when it comes to the type of protein, it's very interesting because both proteins, animal protein and plant protein, will give you great benefit, and it'll help the muscles grow and it'll help them recover. So there's a lot of benefit from protein. We need that. But I think there's an extra bonus when we do the plant-based protein because it's alkaline. And if you're already, exercising hard and generating a lot of lactic acid, we certainly want to avoid becoming more acidic. So I think the alkaline portion of that is a bonus. And then when you think about it, plants have tens and tens of thousands of nutrients in them. That's why they are so beneficial to our health. And so if you're eating a plant-based protein, not only are you getting the protein, you're getting that bonus package of all of those thousands of nutrients that also help support your immune function and the free radicals and the protein breakdown and all those things that we talked about. So I do think there is a difference when you look at the benefit.
And I also look to the animal world, the natural world. We don't giraffes and elephants and gorillas and the largest land animals. For the pediatrics, you can tell the kids the biggest dinosaurs, right? That roamed the earth were plant eaters, weren't they? And right. Look at the tremendous muscle mass and strength that they had. Another question came on the use of sports drinks and electrolyte waters. I know I go to many sporting events and all these different colored drinks come across my desk, and wow, what are we talking about here? What is the best sport drink?
Well, in most cases, of course, for the majority of the time that kids are working out, again, in the normal sports world, water is definitely one of the best sports drinks around, and just staying well hydrated helps your body truly perform as best it can. If there is a longer event where you've got a long soccer game, or a strenuous endurance event, those kind of things, then yes, of course, we need the electrolytes and some of the glucose to be replaced in those. That's very important, especially in things like triathlons, that kind of deal. Where it gets into the problem usually is that a lot of these kids that we see standing on the sidelines are just guzzling down some of those drinks, and they're getting a lot of calories and sugar, and they're not expending any energy to warrant that. So it can contribute to some of the extra weight, that kind of thing. So we do want to be careful. And then it's just never healthy for any of us to put a lot of the colored dyes and things in our body. So if they can get a clear one, that would be certainly better.
Can you go on a little bit more about the immune system? And that's on the mind of everybody today, and certainly in the mind of the Olympics over there in Japan. The immune system's got to be really key. What can the athlete do to maintain a good immune system? Here they've trained for 4 years, maybe 8 years to come to their event, and boom, they get sick and they're out. Or they underperform or not perform at all. It's got to be a very sad situation. And you've seen it. It's
beyond heartbreaking to see that happen. a well-trained athlete already has a lot of adaptations to their system, their physiology, and their immune system. All those kind of things are kind of highly tuned, to their level of activity. But the trouble is then when there's something like this, then you've got added stressors that then can throw that finely tuned immune function just out of balance. There's often a long plane ride, and we all know what that can do to a person. There's the fatigue, just the emotional stress with this kind of competition. So there's a lot of extra factors at that level that can certainly affect how their immune system reacts to that. So by all means, again, the typical, rest and fluids and eating as many fruits and vegetables as possible. And certainly, of course, if they have Juice Plus, that will help as well. But I think a lot of it is the awareness. These athletes really, they know so much. And if they can prepare ahead of time for events like that and really know what they need to do, boy, I saw so many brilliant ones that, they immediately knew how to take care of themselves. And it was just incredible to watch how they could bounce back and perform so well after such long travel or, at the height of the event. So there's a lot of things that people can do.
And as you said, the stressors frequently in such close living quarters. Look at all the closeness of everybody. It's really got to be a big stress in addition to the fact that Juice Plus has 4 immune studies. I love the one from Germany that did doctors and nurses in Germany over a flu season and showed reduced use of medication, reduced flu symptoms. I mean, that's one of my favorite studies. So the fact that there's some data behind, as you said, research so important for us doctors. Well, I am not an elite athlete. I have never won a national championship. What's just some general recommendations for the average person in terms of moving their body, exercising, how many minutes a day, minutes a week, etc.? What does the Academy say about that?
Yeah, we're wanting people to get at least 60 minutes, if you can do that, multiple times a week, if not every day. The trouble with that is most people don't have an hour to set aside to do that. And a lot of people do. They get up early in the morning and they go do it, or they do it after work. But if not, even breaking it up can be helpful. We have a few people at work that, they dedicate 15 minutes of their lunch hour to go outside and walk and really work up a sweat, and that kind of thing matters. And so if they're doing that 4 times a day, that can certainly be very beneficial. We're learning, of course, that sitting is the new smoking, and that people that have these 8 to 5 sit-down jobs, that it's really playing a part in heart disease and other chronic illnesses. So being able to find ways to sneak in 60 minutes, even if it's divided up, will be phenomenal. And if people can't do that, I always just tell them, hey, if you get 30 minutes in, that's better than 0. Anything better than 0 is a good thing.
Okay, great. And I know many people know they don't eat right. They're under some intense strain for the good competitions. What about multivitamins? Why can't I just take it? As you see athletes, right, just taking handfuls of multivitamins. Why is that just not the way to go?
Well, part of it is just kind of the way I think a lot of us were brought up and are still even today, with the thought that we all know universally that we typically don't eat well enough. And so the solution for decades has just been kind of passed down is that, oh, well, then if you take a multivitamin, that's going to replace, the fact that you don't eat well. And that was maybe good and well 60 years ago, but before they actually knew better. But now that there's decades of research showing that a multivitamin is not very recognizable in our body, we do tend to just literally pee it out. That we need the vitamins that are found in our foods. And so when you look at those tens of thousands of nutrients in our fruits and vegetables and our plants, there's also vitamins in them. And that for the most part, we can get the vitamins that we need by eating a very, well-balanced nutritional diet. Now, some things like vitamin D sometimes are difficult to get in our foods, something like B12. So sometimes, yes, we actually have to take a vitamin, and that's fine. But if people are relying on filling in their gaps and making up for the deficit just by taking a handful of multivitamins, I think you're going to be sorely surprised, because you'll have bright yellow urine, but you're not going to have any real beneficial health effect from that.
Right. And in my area of internal medicine, I know there have been several meta-analysis, large studies of the use of multiple vitamins in terms of chronic diseases. And when you're a young athlete, you're maybe not thinking about long-term, but sooner or later, children grow up to be adults and adults, older adults, and they begin to get the chronic, and sometimes at an accelerated rate from all the oxidative stress they build up during their heavy exercise years and athletic years, haven't they? And then so I end up seeing them on my end, on the internal medicine end, with all the chronic diseases, right? The dementia and the diabetes and the heart disease and the cancer. So it's so important, isn't it, to protect yourself at a young age. And the decisions these kids are making at a young age are going to affect them so much downstream as well.
Well, so real quick, I agree,
sure.
because and I can't remember if I said it tonight or not, but the fact there's so many athletes that are super fit, but I see firsthand all the time that doesn't mean they're healthy, because they are generating all of these things that are so stressful to their body, and if they're not fueling appropriately and getting all that good nutrition, then it does add up over time. So being fit is very different from being healthy, and so we just want to make sure that we're both, right?
Right, and I think Dave O'Brien coined that term, and the difference between fitness and health. And that's just what. So with so many thousands and thousands of different things out there, literally, you've alluded to this a little bit before, but in summary, why do you take Juice Plus, and why do you recommend Juice Plus among the thousands of different choices out there, as final words of wisdom?
Yeah, I think I was lucky to kind of already see the need, and that this was just an incredible solution, so that it wasn't, I love that it's not a replacement. Like, you can't just survive on Juice Plus powders. That this isn't the way they want us to incorporate better nutrition. We want people to eat well, make the right choices, eat as many fruits and vegetables as you can. But just knowing that that's difficult for most of us, being able to fill in those days that I'm not doing so well. And that's, I think, that consistency of having Juice Plus in my body, knowing that has really been what has been so important to me, that it's not a substitute, but it's truly a way to add to something that I still need to take the initiative and do on my own. I still have to exercise. I still have to drink water. I still have to get enough rest. And I still have to eat as many fruits and vegetables as I can. But the science and the research behind it is so powerful that I kind of think every day, how can I not eat this and put it in my body? And knowing, again, from an athletic standpoint, it's NSF certified. This is not going to show up on a drug test. This is purely food. This is whole food in a capsule. So those are all things just every day get me excited to go, yes, I love putting this in my body because it has so much value.
And I think you mentioned the shakes too. Before we leave tonight, I think the shakes are a great recovery drink. And tell me a little bit more what you love about the shakes, the complete.
Yeah, phenomenal. I think I've been drinking the shakes for about 15 years and still not tired of them. They are just a wonderful recovery drink because they have great protein and carbohydrate. And again, you're just flooding yourself with all of these different plant nutrients. So it's the additional benefit. You're not just reloading your carbohydrate stores and getting good protein in, but then again, you're supplying all those nutrients to help support the immune system and decrease the free radicals and the protein breakdown. So I sometimes am in a hurry, and so I'll just slam that down for breakfast because again, it's a wonderful ability to get kind of a meal. I'll put some extra nut butter in there, and I'll put some fruit, and of course tons of greens from what we're growing, so it becomes a phenomenal way to start my day.
Fantastic.
Okay. Well, I would really like to thank both of our handsome doctors here for